Hello all and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to learn about 5 different kind of loops in VBA. Using loops, you can loop through cells in a range, shapes in a worksheet, worksheets in a workbook, all open workbooks, items in a collection, dictionary, controls in a user form, and so many other things. And probably this is the reason why loops are considered to be very important programming tools in VBA. Loops are a set of instructions to repeat a code multiple times to achieve a specific task. We will be covering 3 main loops in VBA, which is for loop, do loop, and while when loop. There are 2 kinds of for loops, 2 kinds of do loops. So in all, there are 5 loops. The first one we will cover is for next loop, and then we will do a for each loop, a do while, a do until, and finally while when loop. So let's start with for next loop. Let's say you want to write to cells in column 8 and you want to write sequential dates to the top 6 cells. To do that, we will have to launch the Visual Basic Editor. If you're not aware what Visual Basic Editor is or how to launch it, feel free to watch my previous video, which is Visual Basic Editor and Introduction. Let's quickly launch the Visual Basic Editor by pressing the shortcut key Alt F11. Let's insert a module by right-clicking on VBA project. Under Insert, clicking on Module. I'm going to create a procedure here called sub for next loop example. We will start by writing the date to cell A1. To write sequential dates, we need to add date plus 1 in cell A2 and date plus 2 in cell A3 and so on. So we have to do that 5 times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this statement and paste it 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then I'm going to simply change the cell address. 6. And then I'm going to say plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, plus 4, plus 5. And we are done. Now let's run this code by clicking on the Run Sub User Form button or by simply pressing the F5 shortcut key. Let's go to the worksheet and check what results did we get. 29, 30, 31, 1, 2, 3. So the code wrote sequential dates starting from A1 up till A6. Now these are just 6 cells. Imagine you had to do that for 30 cells. So would you be writing this particular code 30 times? Of course not. That is not efficient code writing. In such a scenario, we will use the for next loop. The syntax of the for next loop is for the counter equal to the minimum value to maximum value, and it ends with next counter. So let's declare the first variable as dim_i as long. One common mistake that people do when declaring the counter for a loop when working with rows is declaring it as integer. Get into the habit of declaring it as long and not as integer. I've explained this on my other video, which is what are variables, data types and constants in Microsoft Excel 365 for Windows. While declaring the row as integer may help for smaller row values, but you will get an overflow error when dealing with higher row values. For example, if you want to enter the dates in not 30 rows, but say 32,768 rows, in that case, the code will give you an overflow error. If you are interested and are not aware how data types work, then do see that video. I've explained data types in detail in that video. The next variable I'm going to take is dt and I'll declare it as date. Now let's assign a date to this variable. So I'll say dt equal to, and I will assign yesterday's date to this variable. I will explain why am I doing that in a moment. So I say 28th March 2022. So let's declare our for loop. So I start with the for statement and then the counter name followed by equal to sign and then the minimum value to the maximum value, and then I end it with next I. So the minimum value 1 is the row 1 and the maximum value 30 is the row 30. A lot of people do not mention the counter name after the next statement. It is a good practice to mention the counter name, because when you have nested fors, it becomes easier to understand this next is for which for statement. Now I'm going to take this statement and I will paste this here. This A2 within quotes can also be written as A ampersand 2. This is nothing but A2. If I copy this and I paste it in the immediate window and I press the enter key, you will notice it is A2. The reason why I split this, because I want to show you how I will replace the number with a variable, which is I. The reason why I did this is when the loop runs for the first time, the value of I will be 1, the second time will be 2, and so on till 30. So I am looping through this code and I'm writing to the cell A1, A2, A3, A4 up till A30. Next, I will replace this date with dt, which is my yesterday's date, and I'm going to increase it by 1. But instead of writing 1, I will replace it with my counter, which is I. So when the loop runs for the first time, this becomes A1 and this becomes yesterday's date plus 1, which is today's date. The second time it becomes A2 and it becomes yesterday's date plus 2, and so on. So let's test this code. Before that, I'm going to comment this. I will go back to the worksheet and I will delete the old dates. Let's run this code by clicking on the Run Sub Userform button. Let's check the output. We'll go back to the worksheet and you'll notice that Excel has put sequential dates starting from A1 up till cell A30. Let's go back to the code. So you noticed how using for next loop reduced the total lines from what could have been 30 odd lines to just 4 lines. Obviously, we would not have used a loop if we wanted to write to just 2 rows. In that case, using loops do not make any sense. So we saw how we can use the for next loop. Now let's understand how the for each loop works. This loop is used to loop through each object or an item in a collection. This collection is not to be confused with the dictionaries and collections. I will explain about dictionary and collections in a different video. Here, when I say collection, I mean group of objects. It could be the worksheet objects or even an array. In this video, we will use an array to demonstrate the for each loop. I will then use the same array to demonstrate how to use for next loop with it. So let's delete this code and I will change this to for each loop example. I'm going to declare an array called dim fruit array as variant. And then I will assign values to it. Let's take any 5 fruits: apple, oranges, grapes, watermelon, and peaches. Let's close the bracket. And I will also declare one more variable called fruit as variant. If I want to loop through each fruit in the above array using for each loop, then this is how I would do it. The syntax of the for each statement is for each, then the counter, and then the collection. And it ends with next counter. So I'll say for each fruit in fruit array. And then I'll end with next fruit. My for loop is now ready. Now whatever I want to do with that particular item, I can do it here. Let's display the item. So I will say MSG box fruit. When I run this, you will notice how I get the names of each fruit. So we saw how the for each loop is used to loop through each object or an item in a collection. Can we use the for next loop in this case? Yes, we can, because the array has its limits, which is also called bounds. I will cover about arrays in a separate video. Right now, let's think of array as an almirah with small compartment which has a fruit. Now, for next loop must be used when the number of iterations is known in advance. Here, do we know how many times we need to loop? No, right? But that's the beauty of array, and hence I chose to use arrays for explaining these loops. So I was saying, think array as an almirah with small compartments. Though you do not have a number of compartments to start a loop like for I is equal to 1 to say 10 compartments, since we do not know about that, how do we go ahead with this loop? Array has something which is called L bound and U bound. We will use that to get the minimum and maximum number of compartments, if I may say so, for the sake of this example. Now let's change this for each loop to for next loop. I'm going to comment this particular section and I'm going to declare my counter, which is dim I, as long. Next, I will write my for next statement. For I is equal to L bound fruit array to U bound fruit array, close parenthesis and press enter key, and then end it with next I. Next I will type MSG box fruit array I, and we are done. So let's run this, and we get apple, oranges, grapes, watermelon and peaches. So we saw how we can use for next and for each for the same example. So depending upon the scenario, you can choose which loop you would like to prefer, whether you want to use for next or for each loop. Let me give you another example where we will use both loops to do the same thing. Let's say we want to loop through the worksheets in this workbook. Right now there is one worksheet. Let me add a couple more. So I'll go back here and I will add 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So total in all there are 6 worksheets. Let's go back to the code. Now let's write a for next loop first, and then we will change it to for each loop. The worksheet object is a member of the worksheets collection. So the worksheet collection contains all the worksheet objects in a workbook. So here the collection will have 6 worksheets. Now let's loop through each of them and display their name. I'm going to insert a new module, and I'm going to type a procedure called looping through worksheets. Let's do the for next loop first. So I'm going to declare my first counter variable, which is dim I as long, and then I will say for I is equal to 1, starting from the very first worksheet, to this workbook dot worksheets dot count, and then I'll close it with next I. If you do not know what this workbook is, how do I get the worksheets count, do not worry. I will cover this in detail when we are interacting with the Excel object model. Right now, I'm just using this to demonstrate how the loops work. So let's use message box and this workbook dot worksheets I dot name. Now when you run this, see what happens. I get sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4, sheet 5 and sheet 6. Great. Now let's use the same code and convert it to a for each loop, which will basically do the same thing. It will give me the names of all the 6 worksheets. So I'm going to change this to dim ws as worksheet. I will use the ws object to loop through all the worksheet objects. And then I will remove this and I will say for each ws in, and then I will delete dot count. What I'm saying is I want to loop through every worksheet object in this workbook worksheets collection. And then I will change this to ws and I will change this to ws. Now let's run this. And I get sheet 1, sheet 2, sheet 3, sheet 4, sheet 5 and sheet 6. So I hope the concept of the for loops is now clear. Now let's move on to do loops. The first do loop that we will tackle is do while. The do while loop repeats a statement or a block of statements while a given condition is true. Once the condition is false, the loop exits. Now here's an important fact. While working with do loops, you have to be very careful. One mistake and you can end up with an endless loop which can crash your workbook, resulting in data loss. For example, like I said, that once the condition is false, the loop exits. If the condition never becomes false for whatever reasons, there will not be a way to stop the loop. It will become infinite. Now, let's take an example to understand how do while loop works. Let me insert the module. I will declare a procedure called sub do while loop example. The syntax of do while loop is do while and then the condition. It ends with loop and then you have statements in between. So let's create a variable which will track when to exit the loop. I'm going to call that variable condition and I will declare it as Boolean. I will set the value of the condition as true. Now, introducing the do while loop. Do while condition is equal to true loop. Let's take the same example that we took for the for next loop. Let's say we want to write sequential dates to first 6 cells in column A. So my condition should be that when the total number of rows goes beyond 6, then the code should stop. Let's incorporate that in our code. But before that, let's go back to the worksheet, activate sheet 1 because that's where we want our data, and we clear column A. I have made sheet 1 active because we have not fully qualified our range objects. I will cover this again, like I said, when I'm talking about how to interact with the Excel objects. So whichever sheet is active, the output will go to that sheet, and I want the output to go to sheet 1. So I made sheet 1 active. Now let's declare a variable I. So I'm going to go up dim I as long. This variable will keep track of the rows. Let's set the minimum value of I as 1. I want the code to write from cell A1. Now let's declare a variable for date. So dim dt as date. This time I will take today's date. instead of taking the previous date. 29.3.20.22 and hash. Now let's write our code, which will start writing from cell A1. Range A ampersand I dot value is equal to dt. So what I'm saying is, when the loop runs for the first time, insert today's date in cell A1. And now I will increase the value of I and date by 1. I will also put a condition: if I is greater than 6, then condition is equal to false. And we are done. If I do not put the condition if I is greater than 6, then condition is equal to false, then what will happen is the condition will never be false and then the code will continue to run. Of course, in this case, it will not be an infinite loop because Excel has 1048576 rows. And then when the value of I becomes 1048577, the code will give an error, method range of object global failed, and stop because it could not find the cell A1048577. The infinite loop will only happen when there is nothing to stop that code. In this code, we used a Boolean variable. Now let's run this code. When you click on this and go back to the worksheet, you'll see the dates have been entered sequentially from A1 to A6. So we were able to write from A1 to A6 using a do-while loop. In this code, we used a Boolean variable. We can also write this code in a slightly different way. For this, what I will do is I will delete the Boolean variable and I will replace condition is equal to true with I is less than 7, and I will delete the if condition. Here, I entered the condition directly in the do-while statement. So what this code will do is, this will keep on running till the time I is less than 7. Why did we choose 7? Because we want to write only till row 6. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to clear this and I'm going to run this again. If you go back, you will notice that it successfully wrote sequential dates from A1 to A6. So this is another way of writing the code. So I hope it's clear how do-while loop operates. Now let's move on to do until loop. As the name suggests, the do until loop repeats a statement or a block of statements until a given condition is true. Once the condition is true, the loop exits. Now let's try and incorporate do until loop in this code. The syntax of do until loop is do until condition and it ends with loop. So I'm going to change this to until and then I'll say I equal to 7. So do until I equal to 7. The moment I is equal to 7, it will stop. Let's go back, clear this, and let's run this code. And we get the sequential dates from A1 to A6. I will take this opportunity to explain something which is also called an exit do statement. You can use the exit do statement to exit the loop. I usually use this when I want to prevent an infinite loop which may occur at runtime. Let's take an example. Here I will delete the condition and I will keep it as do loop. And I will insert a statement: if I is greater than 6, then exit do. Here I have not mentioned any condition in while or until. I just initiated a loop and inside the loop I'm checking for a particular condition. So let's clear the worksheet and let's run the code. If you go back, you will notice that the dates have been sequentially entered from A1 to 6. Hope with this example it is clear how does the do until loop operates. Now comes the last loop, which is while when loop. This loop was created for compatibility with previous languages. I don't even remember when I used it last. Perhaps way back in 2000, if I remember it correctly. Anyways, the while-when loop is not as flexible as the do-while loop. And probably this is the reason why I do not recommend using this loop. But for demonstration purpose, let's understand how this loop works. This is how it looks like. Let's insert a new module. And I will create a procedure called sub while when example. I'm going to go back and copy the code from module 3 and I will paste it in module 4. The syntax of while when loop is while condition and it ends in when. So I'm going to change this do to while. My condition would be I is less than 7 because I want to write up till row 6, and this loop will be when. This is fine. I is equal to I plus 1, dt is equal to dt plus 1. I don't need the if condition. So we are ready. Let's go back to the worksheet. Let's clear the data and let's run this code. If you go back to the worksheet, you will see that the dates have been sequentially entered in the relevant range. Let's do a quick recap. In this video, we learned about 5 different kinds of loops. Using these loops, we loop through cells in a range, we loop through worksheets, and even items of an array. And perhaps this is the reason why loops are considered as one of the most important programming tools in VBA. We learned the 5 different kinds of loops are for next loop, for each loop, do while loop, do until loop, and while when loop. If you still have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can also email me on support@timexcel.com and I will reply to you within 48 hours. If you want to extend support to this channel, then go ahead and watch a couple of videos, drop a few likes, and subscribe to this channel. That is, if you still have not subscribed to it, by clicking on the bell icon. And I will see you on Monday when I talk to you about if then else statement.